Listen-only mode.
Well, hello everyone. I do hope that you can hear me. Yes, there we go. And welcome to the March edition of the NetScaler Masterclass. It's 6 p.m. in the UK and the sun has just set and we're looking forward to a great evening of NetScaler fun and games for everybody. Okay, so my name's Jason Poole and I'll be your host for this evening, and we've got a lot of people online and we've got a lot of people ready to give you some NetScaler goodness as we go through the evening. All right. First up, before we do any of that, we've got to do some housekeeping. First things first, if you cannot hear us, please check your volume settings. I know that you won't be able to hear that, but anyway, remember it for next time. We get a lot of regulars, and even they sometimes are sending us questions. We can't hear you, and it turns out you just need to turn up your volume. Okay, so you've got two options. You can use the Gotomeeting audio, or you can use i.e. your mic and speakers, or you can dial in on the telephone, and there's a separate little thing there. If you need additional numbers, click on that and they'll pop down and you can call in from your local number. Okay, that's the audio. The next piece are questions. In your Gotomeeting control panel flyout, you will see a little question pane. In there is where you type the questions, and we welcome your questions. This is a masterclass, and what makes it a masterclass is the audience participation and interaction. We need you to ask us questions, keep us on our toes, send us kind remarks or topics, suggestions for topics for new masterclasses or whatever, right? I would say this, we will try to get to as many as we can. We might not get to them all. And it's not a support webinar in that we can't take every detail of something that's gone wrong for you in your particular environment and try to fix it. In those cases, please log a call with support. They're much better at taking data and analyzing it in a controlled manner. They're not up against the time of a 2-hour slot of masterclass activity. So please do that. Now, the most popular question we get is this being recorded? In fact, we already have one of those in the question pane, and it is being recorded. We are recording it. We will post it to Citrix TV, and we will send out the link in the next day or so. You'll get an automated email from our marketing department. They're good at sending emails, and they will send you a little link to where the slides for today are posted, and also a link where the TV video is posted as well. Please feel free to click on that, download, stream it, play along at home, and you'll see some great stuff today from Ronan and Mike about getting set up and setting up rules and stuff like that. You may want to try it out on your own when you've got a little more time, and that's what we allow you to do with the recording. Okay, so remember that you can always get in touch with us on netscalermasterclass@citrix.com. If you've got questions after the webinar, between the webinars, please drop us a note on that. We're probably not monitoring it during the webinar because we're all going to be busy and we'll be looking at the question pane. So feel free to do that. Okay, first up, who do we have online? We've got a lot of people from all over the world, even the Philippines. There's some Filipino people on the line here, and I welcome. That's got to be very, very late with them. Some Ecuadorians, Colombians, and of course, Mexico is there. Indians. They love these masterclasses, always turning out in force on this time slot and the earlier time slot as well. Above that, of course, we move into the Western Hemisphere. A lot of people from Brazil and Canada, so welcome one and all. And the most populous nation represented here is the US. So it's great that you all tune in for your monthly dose of NetScaler goodness. And with that, that's who's online from our side. Who's online? Sorry, from your side. Who's online from our side? We've got the usual motley crew. We've got Josh, who's moderating some questions. Steve Barnes is at the back in the middle of the larger picture. In the front row, we've got Mike on the left as you look. Next to him is me with the number 4 on my shirt. Then we've got Ronan with the smile, and then Derek at the end, Derek E at the end there. He may join us a little later on as well. and we'll be your masterclass team for today. And what are we going to talk about? Well, we've got a couple of great sessions lined up for you. Following on from last month's Getting Started guide, Michael's going to talk us through a little bit about deployment modes and really how you can get the best out of your NetScaler in your network and the things that you can enable and how you're going to set it up, 1-arm, 2-arm. He'll explain all what that means and what's best for the environments that you might be looking to deliver from. And then Ronan's going to take us on a little tour of server load balancing. So it is the mainstay of application delivery controllers, or ADCs, and they have grown out of that by adding a lot of new functionality. But generally, everybody's using some form of traffic redirection or server load balancing. So Ronan's going to talk about what it is, why you need it, and how you can set it up. And we call it the basic stuff, only basic because it's used every single time there's a deployment of it. But also he's got a few tips and tricks up his sleeve, sort of really advanced stuff for you guys who want to know really what's looking under the hood. I think an analogy he used earlier was, it's okay, you can press the accelerator in the car, but I'm going to show you how the mechanic does it under the hood by pulling the right cables and levers to make the car go fast and rev high. We've got a couple of product updates for you later on. We've got Mudit, who's online from Bangalore, so it's very late with him. And he's going to tell us a little bit about CloudBridge 7.4. That's a new release of our WAN optimization product, and that's in beta code right now. We're looking for beta code testers, so we're going to run a poll a little later on to ask you if you want to do that. So if you're a partner or you're a CloudBridge customer and you want to try out the new software before it's released, select yes in the poll when we come to it, and we'll get in touch with you. Then Steve Barnes is going to give us a little bit of an overview of the NetScaler 25,000 series that was launched this week at Mobile World Congress. And then we're going to go on to some news, and you'll see some what's on stuff as well. So that's great. Michael, I think you're up first. Are you there? There we go.
I am indeed. So yeah, I'm here. Thanks for that, Jason. A bit tongue-tied there, I noticed. So welcome everyone to the webinar today. And I will be covering NetScaler deployment modes. Now, in our last webinar, I covered the topic of getting started with NetScaler, and in that session, I actually briefly touched on deployment and networking topologies, basically in the form of whether you want to deploy a single or a dual-arm environment. Well, what I wanted to do today is I wanted to dive a little bit deeper and highlight other considerations that we should be making when deploying a NetScaler. And I think that one of the first things we need to consider is which edition of the NetScaler we'll deploy. Now, this decision would be based on a set of predetermined factors, like the requirement for load balancing. Do I require GSLB? Maybe I even require web application firewalling, and so on. Now, based on those factors, we can then ascertain which of these editions that you see on the screen now best suits. Now, we're well aware that it's not a case of one suit fits all, okay? So there may be an instance, for example, that I want to leverage a comprehensive layer 4 through 7 load balancing environment, which gives me standard edition, but I also want the ability to leverage global server load balancing. So what I can do is I can buy an option pack that just enables global server load balancing on my standard edition. It is vitally important to have that flexibility. The URL I'd like to draw your attention to at the bottom of the screen, that explains all the different features and functions we have within the edition environments we've got there, and what options are or what features are optional and what are just part or bundled as part of the pack. But that's not all that we have to consider. We also need to consider which platform to use. Now, as you can see on this screen, the NetScaler has quite a few platforms. This in itself is a great opportunity for diversity in deployments. the factors that we look at here will be along the lines of capacity. What load do I expect to have on my environment? But you've also got to bear in mind that you should plan for the future. So for example, if I'm only going to be using 3 gigabits today, but at a peak holiday period, that load could triple, then I need to move my attentions, say, from a VPX environment to an SDX or an MPX that can provide me that growth potential. Talking about the MPX and the SDX, let's describe what each one of them are. The MPX, this is a single instance, single piece of tin offering. The VPX is a virtual appliance that can reside on many of the popular hypervisors you see on the market today: XenServer, Hyper-V, ESX, and KVM. Now the SDX. The SDX is a multi-instance environment that leverages our VPX technology on a single piece of tin. Now this SDX platform has a highly optimized XenServer hypervisor to meet the exacting needs of the environment. What you'll also notice there is that we do have NetScaler on the Amazon Web Services environment. So a question now would be, do I want to use physical or virtual environments? Maybe I want to go hybrid, hey, like the SDX. Now the approach to the question here slightly differs from the approach to what was probably the similar question a few moments ago. As you see, the SDX can deliver the same performance as an SDX. You look at the throughput performances on the MPX, up to 120 gigabit. The SDX, we're seeing exactly the same throughput, upper echelons of the throughput. But there may be a requirement within your organization that is all about a segregated function. Now, what do I mean by a segregated function? So imagine a remote gateway that provides you remote access from the internet into your internal network. Your security team or your organization might force you to say that device can only do that function. Or how about this? The applications team, they have a specific requirement for load balancing, and rather than incorporate it into your global load balancing plan, you could simply provide them with a VPX instance that's running off an SDX, or just a VPX general running off one of the other hypervisors. Now that we've thought about the additions and the platforms available, I suppose the next biggest question we always get is that, well, where do I place this thing? Where do I place the NetScaler? The placement of the NetScaler is not definitively set in stone. The NetScaler will reside in the network location for which the features it is capable of delivering are most needed. So, if you're wanting to GSLB, global server load balance your internet site, okay, its placement would most probably be in the DMZ. Similarly, if you're wanting to deploy a NetScaler gateway for your remote access, the placement would also be in the DMZ. But if we're wanting to load balance your internal intranet or SQL servers that you have in your environment, then its placement would more comfortably be in your secure network. Now, obviously, the SDX can introduce a new dimension here, as you could have the single tin hosting very different NetScaler instances fulfilling very different roles and in different segments of your network. DMZ on one network, DMZ on one instance, internal secure network on the other network. Now this is mainly due to the capability of segregation of the instances that the SDX can perform. It also has the ability to segregate the allocation of the NICs themselves to specific instances. The SDX also gives us the ability to offload SSL processing to dedicated crypto cards on the TIN chassis itself. So all of these things give us an immensely flexible environment with the SDX technology. Bringing our attentions back to a single instance, we can also provide delegated administration. There are 4 command policies that you can assign to your users or groups. Okay, let's start with read-only. And as the name suggests, it provides read-only access to all the show commands on the NetScaler CLI, except for the running config and the actual saved config in the form of the ns.config file, ns.com file. One other thing it doesn't show are the show commands for the NetScaler command group, and Ronan will show a couple of those in a few moments' time. The operator policy takes this access one step further by providing read-only access and access to commands to enable and disable services and servers. So you've got the added ability to enable and disable services, but not to edit them, Networking gives us full access with the following exceptions: the ability to set and unset commands, showing the saved config in the form of the ns.com file as before, the running config, and showing the GSLB running config. So those are the exceptions when you have the network flag on your account. And finally, the big one there, the super user. This assigns full access, and it is the same privilege as the NS root user that we used to log in initially. Obviously, these 4 policies are generic, they're out the box. You also have the possibility, I should say, to define your own more granular policies simply by selecting the Add button. Here, you can then assign a policy name and launch the specific, the spec editor, okay, which you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of the screenshot there. Now, what this does is it launches a window that helps me build out the policies to meet my needs. Now, by clicking the Add, I can then choose a specific privilege. So what I've done in my example here is I've actually browsed down and I've selected NetScaler Gateway. And what you can see at the bottom of that window is the command preview. If I simply click Create, it will go and add this group entity into my policy at the back, in the back of the screen there. Now, once I select, I can select, okay, what I've done is I've just said, right, I don't want to add another one. I've selected Close. I have the new command policy now known as Access Gateway, and I can then proceed to assign it. So if I click OK, you see it there, and then OK again, it comes up and it shows now as a 5th option in my command policies. Now remember, the assignment of these command policies is not restricted to the local users on the NetScaler. The NetScaler also supports Radius, LDAP, and TACACS. In many cases, organizations put an extremely complex password on the NS root account and then put all administration via their directory servers. Now, before the question comes in, no, you cannot delete the NS root account as a local user. It is also used for replication across nodes, amongst other vital tasks. So now moving on to the modes and onto the features. Over the next couple of slides, we'll see the default selections. And in these tabs, it is recommended to tailor these selections to your specific needs. The URL I've got there at the bottom of the screen is a great knowledge base article that covers the recommended settings and best practices for a generic implementation of a NetScaler appliance. Obviously, use this as a reference point. The NetScaler is extremely flexible, and as I said a moment ago, you can tailor it to your specific needs. Now, I spun up the NetScaler that I'll be showing you in a few moments' time from a fresh download. And what you see on my screen now for the modes are the 5 pre-enabled settings. Obviously, you can go and disable these as you see fit. But let me just cover off what each of these does. We'll start with FastRamp. FastRamp enables the NetScaler merely to start with the congestion window of the fastest server connection. Edge mode, the appliance is able to dynamically learn up to and about 40,000 HTTP servers and proxy TCP connections for these servers. This mode turns off the collection of statistics for the dynamically learned services and is typically used, and as I say, I've got to stress, is typically used when transparent deployments for cache redirection is required. Onto the layer 3 mode. We can use this mode to configure the NetScaler appliance to look at its own routing table and then forward packets that are not destined for itself. Obviously, that means that with this mode enabled, the appliance performs route table lookups and forwards all packets that are not destined for any appliance-owned IP address. As you would expect, by disabling this mode, the appliance would just drop any of these unknown packets. Now, when it comes to the use subnet IP mode, I briefly mentioned this in our last webinar. In the different types of IPs that we can host within the NetScaler, and one of them was the subnet IP or the SNIP. Now, when you add a SNIP to the appliance, you actually also automatically, the system automatically adds a corresponding route entry in the routing table of the NetScaler for that subnet. A great article that actually covers this is actually CTX 117360. And finally, on this screen, the path MTU discovery, which is actually a common feature on most networking devices. This allows networking devices such as the NetScaler, routers, or switches to determine the largest packet size allowed along any arbitrary network path. This actually enables your network traffic to flow correctly from one endpoint to another without any of the traffic being dropped along the way. Another great article that I found when I was doing some background checking for this presentation is CTX 110491. Now, that article itself that I've just mentioned is a few years old, but it is a great source of information on all of the modes that you see there on this screen. The next couple of slides that I want to cover, they will cover the features of the NetScaler. And as you can see here, the basic features are all off by default. Look at it from this approach. We're wanting to operate a white list of featuring. So we don't want to have everything turned on by default and then for the administrator to then sit there and say, well, do I really want SSL offloading? Do I really want load balancing? It's all off. You go and enable it. Now, the system has the intelligence built in that if I am going to configure a specific feature, let's say I'm configuring a load balancer, a load balanced vServer with a couple of services at the back, the system will actually prompt me and tell me that this feature is not enabled. And it'll ask me for an enable disable action, as you see on the top right hand of my screen. I think that all of the features that you see here, the 10 features that you see, are pretty self-explanatory as to what they allow us to do. And again, this flexibility alongside the SDX VPX platforms, we can fulfill that requirement of the segregated functions that I mentioned earlier. As with the slide previously, we actually in this section see the advanced features of the NetScaler. Several of these features, I look at them as being enhancements to the capabilities we saw or the features we saw in the previous slide from the basic set. Take, for example, AppFlow. This provides visibility at the transaction level for HTTP, SSL, TCP, and other flows. You can sample and filter the flow types that you want to monitor. AppFlow uses actions and policies to send records for the selected flows to a specific set of collectors, much like our very own Insight Center. You can enable AppFlow for a virtual server so that it provides statistics for that virtual server. You can additionally enable it for a specific service representing an application server, then monitor the traffic to that application server itself. A really simple one that is vitally important is surge protection. This feature ensures that connections to the backend server occur at a rate that that server can handle. This means that the chances of a server being unable to respond to new requests is mitigated. And finally, the last one I wanted to just draw your attention to here is the responder feature. Responses can be based on who sends the request, where it is sent from, and other criteria with security or system management implications. So for example, when a user requests a website's homepage, you may want to provide different homepage depending on any of the critical information I've just mentioned. This feature is simple and quick to use. So with that, I actually wanted to show you basically a 3-arm environment. Okay, I spoke at the beginning about 1 arm, 2 arms. Let's have a look at a 3-armed environment. What I've got is I've got my Xen server in my lab here, and on it I've defined 3 networks. I've got my true physical network, which is under ETH0, and on that I've got the client that I'm presenting to you off today connecting to the one side of my NetScaler. Now I'll put my hand up here, folks. I've actually got my NetScaler. You're probably looking at that going, hang on, Mike, you've got your NSIP on the outside. You know, why have you done that? I've inverted my NetScaler, but it gives me the same results. I've then defined 2 internal interfaces on my Xen server. These are just within the Xen server. They don't go anywhere. They're not patched to anything. And on those internals, I have bound 3 servers. On ARM2, I've bound my blue and my green servers. And on the 3rd one, I have bound my red server. So if I bring my Xen Center into view now, just bring it across to the screen here. What you can see, there's my networking topology. Yes, I've got a few other physical networks defined, but none of them are actually, one of them is connected, the others aren't. But the top 2 there, that's my internal interfaces. And then there's the core one that I'll be using. Blue is connected to ARM2, green to ARM2, red to ARM3, and then my NetScaler, I've actually got it having an ARM or a link to all 3 networks. So if I just have a look at my browser, so I'll bring my browser over. Now what I've done at the moment to show you how we can do the load balancing over these different subnets is I've just deleted the subnet IP for the red server, that 90 network. As I go through, and these are pages you would have seen me use last month when we spoke about getting the NetScaler up and running. I'm just clicking through, refreshing the page, and the server index is coming up, and it's bouncing between the green and the blue servers, a basic round-robin load balancing. But now I want to add in the red server itself. So all I have to do is I've got this already pre-configured with pretty much everything except the one IP address. And that IP address is the subnet IP for my red server. So I just come in under System, Networking, and IPs. I will select Add. I can then go and add the IP address of the, whoops, would help if I select the field. So 168.90.1, and this is going to be my subnet IP address. Okay, so I'm putting it as .1, and I've got a 24-bit subnet. Now, other things that we can do here, I can go and enable GUI access, allow access only to management applications. I can disable these features as well. Obviously, if you are going to be doing this in the real world, firstly, my NSIP would be sitting on another segment, okay, rather than sitting out to what is in effect my internet. This client, just look at that as my internet. And I can then turn on specific management for the subnets that sit in ARM2 and ARM3 should I require it. But I'll leave those as defaults for now, and I'll just click Create. Now, if I quickly pop down to my load balancing and have a look at the services here, so under Traffic Management Services, and it's already popped up. Isn't that just the case? I spoke too long. I was hoping that you would actually see that red on ARM3 was actually showing us down because my monitor was not able to communicate to my server itself off the NetScaler because that subnet IP wasn't there. But if I now click the refresh here, you see it's automatically popped in the red server into my list of available load balanced services that I have at the back end. Now that is an extremely basic environment of how to deploy your NetScaler. Things to consider: how many arms am I going to use? Which edition am I going to use? Which platform am I going to use? And where in the network it is going to be placed. And with that, Jason, that brings me to the end of my section. I don't know if you've spotted any gotcha questions. I noticed that Steve's been knocking them out quite quickly.
Steve has been a superstar, and maybe Ronan as well, I'm not sure, but they've all been going hell for leather at it, which is great. Now, you mentioned that all the features are off by default. I guess that's a good security piece.
Yeah, I wouldn't sort of label it as a security an intent by us as a security motive. I think that's just best practice across the industry. You don't want to have your load balancing on by default. All of a sudden, you turn the NetScaler on, and your whole network just starts going crazy in the background. Mm-hmm. So it is common sense, I would say, rather than security.
Okay, cool. Now, there's some general questions which I just clear up. Someone's asking, are there different editions for VPX as well?
A great question. The editions, folks, are exactly the same. Whether you're running it on a VPX, an MPX, an SDX, or the Amazon AWS. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is also the code base. The upgrade files that you get, the tarballs that you can download off our website, they are the same across the board, whether you're running it on any of those platforms, physical or virtual. Mm-hmm. So it's not a case of having to consider if you're wanting to move your environment from a physically hosted environment within your secure data center to a cloud provider such as AWS or SoftLayer or any of the other providers. It's not a case of thinking, I'm going to have to change all my NSconfig files and everything else. Yes, there are subtle changes you will need to make in your NSConfig file. And if I just bring, that actually brings up a nice point there, Jason, is if I just bring up my GUI here, and I just show the interfaces, you can see there that I've only got 4 interfaces defined, of which one of them is my loopback. If you're going from a physical instance, an MPX, to a virtual instance like I've got here, those interface definitions will be vastly different, because you're going from an 8-port box or a 16-port box to 3 ports. So there are the subtle changes that you will need to manually change within your NSConfig file. There's some great articles on our knowledge base on how to sort of identify those generic statements of like the definition of my interface and how you can remove them.
Great. Okay. So I'm just looking at some of the other questions here, but there was one actually which I think we'll probably deal with from James. Is it James? No, it's Jason S. about HA scenarios, and Jason will probably look at that one next month, so hold fire on that.
So I've just spotted one from Jamie H, Jason, and this is a great one, and one that we often overlook, you know, and it's how to move the NSIP away from the customer-facing side towards a different VLAN. Now, yeah, you make the statement there, Jamie, that changing the NSIP sounds risky. It's not as scary as it sounds. The only thing to bear in mind, okay, is that if you are going to change the NSIP, you will need to reboot your NetScaler.
Right.
Now, it's personally, when I have done this, what I've always done is I have done it via an SSH environment, or via a connection to the file system utilizing an application like WinSCP, and I've gone and directly edited the ns.com file and then forced a reboot of the NetScaler. It is not a big thing, but be warned that you need to be 100% sure of your routing, because there could be instances where you just think, oh, well, I've just changed the NSIP to 172, to a 172 network, a class B network, but I've got no class B, no, I've got no routing table set up to a class B network in my network environment. So just be careful and just plan it. It's not as scary as you would think.
Great. There's another question here from George M. George M. But SDX requires a license for each VPX running on it. Do SDX appliances come preloaded with an SDX license, and can you buy additional VPX licenses? So
that's a great question, and one that I actually didn't cover there. The SDX, when you buy an SDX, you will get a preset amount, or what we term an instance pack. Okay, so depending on which SDX you go for, whether it be one of the 8000 series or one of the higher grade series that you have, you'll get a different number of instance packs by default when you purchase the box. You can add to that by buying a 3-instance pack or a 5-instance pack. Now, it's worth noting, folks, that the instance packs that you buy with an SDX are by default always Platinum Edition.
Good point.
Right? So it's always important to note that it's a Platinum Edition VPX license that you will, or a Platinum Edition license that you will be getting with each of those instance packs that you will get.
That's a good point, and then you can turn it down to enterprise or standard when you go to deploy it, if that's what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Another question from Jean-Marc P. Do you have VPX for Hyper-V 2012 R2?
I have got it running in my lab environment. I'm not 100% sure if we have released a supportable version of that yet. As I say, I've got it running on one of my lab servers. but we can check that out for
Yeah,
Jean-Marc.
we'll check that one out. Okay, Mike, with that, I'm going to let you go and have a little look at the answers and see if you can type some answers into those questions. And we will move on. So thank you very much. And we'll move on to Ronan O'Brien. Ronan, are you with us? And are you ready? Ronan's being very quiet tonight. Okay, is anyone out there, or am I just talking to myself? Have I lost audio?
I'm here. Maybe because Ronan joined early, it threw him off.
Ah, could be, yeah. Ronan,
Yeah, I was about to say that's what it is.
We've made you presenter, Ronan, and here we go. Ronan, we don't hear you. Are you muted? You're not muted at our end. Okay, so anyway, while Ronan sorts that piece out, let's just give you a little bit about. He's going to tell us, as I mentioned, about server load balancing, or what he's calling NetScaler load balancing. I think he's going to touch on some of the global stuff as well. Ah, you're back with us.
So yes, I can hear you fine. The old turn it off, turn it back on again for my my wireless headset.
Fantastic. Oh, good. Okay. Well, we're always happy to have you here. You know, the stalwart of Masterclass, and you're going to be doing some load balancing, setting it all up for the first time, and a little treat for the experts, right?
Absolutely. So back to basics. So looking at the kind of a bread and butter NetScaler functionality, and I just want to just maybe, for those of you out there who kind of live and breathe NetScaler, and thinking, well, I'm not going to learn anything here. So hopefully I've got something here at the end for you that you definitely, well, I'd be surprised if you knew. But also I just want to maybe reignite a few ideas here on the why, the what, and the how, and also give you some ideas on how you can look at your own infrastructure and make it more resilient by using the load balancing features. So there's one or two little tips and tricks I'll expose here. So some of the things that our consultants would go in if they were doing a review of a customer's production environment and say, some fine tuning, so to speak, just to make things work, set things up so that they will be as best as they possibly could. All right, so a quick dip into why. So why do we load balance? There's a variety of reasons why we load balance, and one of the main ones is availability. So when we look at availability, it's about the servers providing traffic, providing responses to many clients. I just have one client here, but many clients. And what happens if one of those backend web servers goes down? So in our little scenario here, we have requests, and the response is flying back between client and server. Usually what happens with kind of typical server-side sessions is that once the first request lands on a backend server, we persist. Something called persistence kicks in, and that basically means that the user will always land on the same backend server. If persistence is not configured, the kind of functionality you would expect to see is that you may have a shopping cart application, and you go and you buy something, and then suddenly it's gone out of your shopping cart, and then you refresh the page, and then you see it's back in there again. So that's when persistence is not working, but usually it's set up to persist so that you will always land on the same backend server. However, if this backend server has a problem, or let's say, if it's a Microsoft box or an Apache box, Linux, and you need to patch that to close some vulnerability, the system may need a restart. You're going to need to send traffic somewhere else. Okay, so one of the things we can do is we can graciously shut down this backend web server. So NetScaler will not send any new connections to that server. It will continue servicing existing connections, and it will drain the connections off. Once the connections have been drained, the server is down, and then traffic will continue to be sent from, or will continue to be sent, but it will land on a different backend server. As a client here, I have no idea that I've been switched to a different system. If this happens, like if it's an unexpected outage, I may see maybe my shopping cart will empty itself, and I go, that's strange. I might have to go back and fill it again. It depends how the application systems are actually handling that. Often in production environments, there'll be you would have your web front end, and you'll have a middle tier application server, Tomcat, WebLogic, something like that, and that will actually hold the session for you. So this would actually be completely invisible to the end user that they're actually landing on a different web server. Okay, it would be totally transparent. So availability is the first thing. Secondly, reducing a single point of failure. Right, so this is something for anyone who's deploying solutions, consultants, anyone who's architecting, building environments. Wherever you type in an IP address or fully qualified domain name into a box somewhere during a deployment, you need to ask yourself, what happens if that system goes down? Will this deployment break? Will there still be some sort of functionality? We know that when we use, for example, a Windows Active Directory system, there's a primary and there's a secondary system. When I log on in the morning, go into the Office plugin, log on, if that primary LDAP server is not there, my client is configured to look for the second one. Okay, and it'll find that through the internal methods, kind of services lookups and things like that. But it will find it. So this is something that we have to consider, right? We can use NetScaler to actually provide load balancing or redundancy. So I can do kind of active-passive type of load balancing here, where I can have a primary LDAP server and a secondary. And if the primary goes down, then I fall back to the secondary. I can set this up, and that's very important for reducing single points of failure. Right? There's no point spending a lot of time on each individual component when they're not actually connected all that securely. Okay, so you need to have more than one. I guess, yeah, it's a pretty good analogy. Typing in this single IP address of one single server, it's kind of like this little bit of wire holding the whole thing together. All right, you need to have a few different levels of redundancy. Okay, server offload is another reason why we use load balancing. Okay, and this is where we start looking at the financial end of things, return on investment and that kind of thing. So usually, if you have a plain layer 3 load balancer just doing simple forwarding of traffic, it's not intercepting it, it's not doing any offloading. You'll find if you introduce a NetScaler into this type of scenario, you'll see that there's actually less resources required to provide the running of your system. The main reason for that is that we have dedicated hardware, as Michael referred to earlier on. We've dedicated SSL offloading hardware on the appliance. We have features such as integrated caching, which will actually hold objects in its RAM and serve them directly back to the client, which means the web servers have less work to do. It is a full TCP proxy, and that means that the backend servers don't have to manage the thousands and thousands of TCP setups and teardowns that the NetScaler will do. And of course, the NetScaler has its completely rewritten, customized TCP stack that is designed to do just that. This TCP stack and the packet engines which process the packets, they also provide distributed denial of service protection, SYNFID protection, a whole bunch of protections which can offload your backend servers. Usually what happens is that it's not that you would turn servers off when you deploy NetScaler, but rather if you have an old load balancing system in place and your backend servers are not are reaching max capacity, you can either choose to invest in more servers, or you can invest in an ADC, which means you do not need then to go off and buy more servers. But then you also get the added value when you buy your NetScaler of things like application firewalling, as I said, integrated caching, being able to rewrite responses, provide security for your applications, and so forth. All right, so that's server offloading, and that's just something you get with your load balancing. Lastly, redundancy. we have a variety of different redundancies which you get with NetScaler. One of them is appliance redundancy. So if you have, most data centers will usually have two different power sources. If you only have one power supply plugged into each one, if power goes in one system, it will seamlessly fail over to the second NetScaler. So traffic will continue to flow. All that will be seen on the network is that the IP will suddenly belong to a different MAC, right? That is if you are doing HA in that particular manner, or we can actually use virtual MAC, so you don't even see that change happening on the network. We also have backup redundancies. So I can have a production server farm, I can have a backup server farm. This backup server farm could live in the cloud. It might live on slightly more expensive architectures, but it's cheaper to actually maintain them if they're not being used. You might pay by bandwidth or something like that, and so they only kick in when all of these systems go down. NetScaler also has the intelligence, where you can actually provide weights and thresholds, and you can decide, okay, 2 of these servers are down. This one is still up, but in fact, 1 is not enough to carry the load. So if more than 1 fails, i.e. 2, then we want to fail over to the backup. All right, so we have lots of different scenarios like that. However, the client hitting the NetScaler this will be completely unaware to them. They will not know this is happening. It's still the same FQDN, it's still the same IP address, the same port that they're connecting to, right? So NetScaler hides the fact that something has actually gone wrong, and traffic just continues to flow. We have data center redundancy or global server load balancing. We'll be covering this. This is a feature in its own right, but it is a form of load balancing. So I thought I'd just throw this in here as well. And there's some really cool functionality that we can introduce. Things like proximity-based load balancing, where I have a data center in Europe, a data center in Americas, maybe one in APAC. And of course, all the European clients will be load balanced to the European data center. All the Americas clients will be load balanced. There, it makes sense. Of course, if a digger goes through the cable at the European data center, we want the European customers to be sent to the Americas, right? So there is still that level of redundancy, and that's something that we get with NetScaler, but that's global server load balancing, and we will discuss this in greater detail in a different webinar. Lastly, scale. Right, so if I do need to add more servers, okay, this is fairly trivial. We're talking 2 lines of NetScaler config once you have your server plugged in and the content pushed out to it. Okay, so 2 lines of config per server. It means if I have 2 backend web servers with 4 lines of config on my NetScaler, I can double my backend server workload. Okay, so scaling it, making it very easy, and again, the client is completely unaware that there's now additional servers carrying the load. This is also part of the NetScaler auto-scaling story, where systems can be spun up dynamically and spun down in a cloud-hosted environment. Okay, NetScaler has all the APIs. We have all of the smarts to hook into those sort of architectures. So what exactly is load balancing? Right, before we go any further, it is the bread and butter of any application delivery controller. But in fact, there are delivery controllers. I guess there are load balancers out there, and there's application delivery controllers. Okay, and there is a difference between the two. What I'm talking about, basic load balancing, it can be SharePoint servers, Exchange, Storefront, Microsoft SQL, MySQL. Once the content is the same, once the workload or the service being provided is the same, then we can do simple load balancing. One of the most underused functions on the NetScaler, I believe, is DNS server load balancing. One of the reasons for this is that we can process a high number of UDP and DNS requests per second, but we also, when we load balance our DNS servers, we also cache the responses on the NetScaler, and we leave them there according to the time to live packet set, or the time to live bit that's set in the response. So that means it will obey the time to live. It means my DNS servers do not have to respond. They only have to respond once, and subsequent requests are served from the NetScaler. We can also rewrite some of those DNS responses if we want to. So negative responses like I don't know what that record is. You can respond with an IP address, which if it's a HTTP request that's sourced the DNS lookup, you can send it back an IP with a nice friendly search page saying sorry we didn't find the host you're looking for, but maybe search our website and you might find it. So just those are the types of examples that where you can look for. Of course, load balancing database services and optimizing database servers and caching responses, something else we do as well. That's called data stream. Again, topic for a different day, but it all falls underneath the load balancing umbrella. You also have internal components. So when you're deploying an architecture, so think of anything you're deploying. It could be, it could be SAP. It could be a bespoke, custom written architecture with application servers, databases, so on. Anywhere where there's an IP address where you have to type in a single IP, you can load balance those components on NetScaler. It just has to be TCP or UDP, and then we can load balance it. All right. So a quick statement. So load balancing, I would like to think it is something that distributes the load across multiple healthy servers intelligently. And I saw a question pop up earlier on. So an intelligent load balancing algorithm such that your customer is not aware that there are multiple separate servers hosting the service from behind one entity. So intelligence means that we have more than just round robin. I can look at, for example, least connections, so the backend server with the least number of connections. I can look at the backend server that has the fastest response time, so send it to the fastest one. There's a whole variety of different algorithms that we have available to you to choose for load balancing, and that's something that an application delivery controller will have, but a basic load balancer won't really have the same what's the word I'm looking for? Sophisticated load balancing algorithms. Okay, healthy. This is very important. We need to make sure that we send requests only to servers that are deemed to be up. If I send a request to a server that's down, I've just sent it into a cul-de-sac. Okay, there's no more. It's a dead end. One of the users is sitting there going, that web page didn't work for me, right? And that's a bad place to be. Okay, especially when you have. That's the reason why you have a server farm. It's for availability. So if you don't have your health checks configured properly, you're failing at the first hurdle. Okay, so you need to make sure that you are doing intelligent health checks, in-depth health checks. All right, so we have lots of built-in monitors that are very easy to configure, and you can look for a particular string in a response. If I'm load balancing my database servers, or if I simply want to know if a database server is up, I can send a SQL request to a database server and look for something in the response. I can actually parse that response and make sure a certain string is present. Lastly, one entity. So NetScaler will configure we configure what's called a virtual server, right? So the client thinks they're talking to a server. In fact, they're talking to the NetScaler who passes on the request to the backend server. Okay, so hence the virtual term. We can have up to 60,000 servers behind one NetScaler virtual server IP address. So that's the power that you can represent with NetScaler. The client thinks it's talking to one server. If they switch between multiple different backend servers, they don't see www1, www2. It's not visible to them. They see one IP address, one port, and they think they're talking to some magnificent super server, but in fact it could be 10, 20 fairly low caliber pizza box type servers, commodity servers. All right. So the types of load balancing we do: firewall load balancing, link load balancing. This is load balancing of different components. Global server load balancing, we spoke about that. And we can load balance TCP, UDP. We also have SSL TCP, so we can encrypt TCP between the NetScaler and the client, and we can then decrypt it on the NetScaler. Just looking at the drop-down box from the NetScaler itself, we can see all the different types of load balancing methods that are the protocols that we support. The difference between, say, HTTP, right, and TCP port 80 is that once we tell the NetScaler that the traffic is HTTP, it can then do some really cool things with it. So that means, I can, with a very simple app expert expression, I can, for example, remove the server header from the response so people don't know what technology I'm using. I can apply my application firewall, which will look into the HTTP requests to make sure no one is trying to attack the application from a logical perspective. We can do RDP, where we are aware, for example, of the token that's sent by the client, the persistence token, to make sure the user will land on the same server if they're disconnected, that kind of thing, right? So once you tell the NetScaler what the protocol is, we can do some really clever stuff. It's really easy to do that layer 7, those layer 7 smarts. All right. So how does it do it? Like a sort of a recipe, you will need to load balance. Mike's previous class where he showed you how to get a VPX up and running. So that's last month's webinar. He got a VPX, downloaded it, got up and running, configured the management IP and so on. So it's deployed. In our case, we're going to use a relatively flat network. So the virtual IP is going to be 208. The NetScaler management IP is 206. The subnet IP is going to be 207. Okay, so 206, 207, 208. So I have my NetScaler. I need a virtual IP. I have one of those. I need a web server IP address. I've got 3 web servers with different content just to show that requests land on different servers. And I need an IP address to put on the NetScaler that NetScaler will use to talk to the web servers. Because don't forget, NetScaler is a TCP proxy. So you have the client talking to the NetScaler VIP. That's one GET request. And then you have the NetScaler SNP sending the same request to the to one of the backend servers. Okay, so we see the same conversation twice on NetScaler. And the fact that we do this, the fact we break it up, means that we can multiplex connections. So I can open up one TCP connection here. I can have 500 connections here with many different clients, and I simply send the same requests over we send all the client requests over one TCP connection to the backend web server. And that means this web server here doesn't have to worry about the setup and tear down of all those TCP sessions. Isn't a huge thing when you've got 10 users. When you have 10,000 users, that does put some load on the server. Okay, so I'll need these 3 things. I have all of these up and running. Next thing I need to do is I need to create 3 entities, or I need to create 2 entities really, and I need to connect them. So one is I create the virtual server. For this, I just need a name, the IP address which I got previously, a port, and a protocol. That's all. I need to configure my web servers. I need their IP addresses, port, and protocol. And then I just need to connect them together. Right, so I configure the client side, I configure the server side, connect, and I'm done. Right, now off I go. I'm doing some load balancing. Very, very simple. If I want, I can apply an in-depth health check. The health check we apply is usually just a TCP SYN, so we just check that the port is open. But you, by rights, you should do more than that in a production environment. All right. So let's move on to the demo. So I'm going to summon the demo gods, make sure that they do right by me. And as I said previously, I don't want to give Jason I don't hear the glee in his voice when something if a mishap happens, and then you all get free troubleshooting. So hopefully I'll won't have to go through that this particular session. Now, so I'm going to log into my NetScaler first and foremost. And I configure my subnet IP. So this should be where you are. You've got my NetScaler VPX. It's completely empty, and I know it's empty because this is the wizard that you get when you only have the NSIP configured and nothing else. All right. So I connect to this SNP. I want to add it. 10, 19. Oops. Seven. And continue. I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller because what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to show you that when I create the vServer, NetScaler will own the IP address and it will start to respond. So at the moment, this IP address doesn't exist on the network. I'm just going to go now into load balancing. I'm going to configure my vServer. Or we do, I know what, we'll configure the service group first. So I'm going to configure the backend, right? So the backend servers going to be configured. It doesn't really matter which ones I do. RGB service group, RGB service group. HTTP, that's all I need for now. I click OK. And I go to members. I have to tell it which systems where my web servers are. Now, because I have my IP addresses consecutive, it's in a range 62 to 64. They're all running on port 80. And I hit create. And I'm done. Okay. Little refresh there. They're all up. Happy days. Now I go to create my vServer. Now keep a close eye over here. RGB vServer. I do that 3208. And there we go. Immediately. And it's prompting me here. It knows that load balancing is disabled. Do I wish to enable it? That's just making sure that I don't configure anything else without knowing that it's disabled. It will allow me to configure my vServer on my services, but it will only send requests to the first bound service. All right. Okay. So we have our load balancing vServer. I need to configure my service group. So we need to do that connection point between the two entities that I have configured. And let's add our service group in here. Bind, and I'm done. Okay, so I go on here to my browser, and we can see I'm going to red, green, blue, red, green, blue, red, green, blue. Okay, so we can see there we are, load balancing up and running. Usually the content would be identical, so you wouldn't see this, but I just obviously have different colors just to show that we're landing on different backend servers. All right, we can go. This is going directly to the web servers here. All right, now you will see, if you're very eagle-eyed, and let me just zoom in here. If you look at some of the text, you'll see this here at the bottom has master class, right? Master dash class. This one here, go back one, doesn't have a dash. All right, so just take note. We'll see why that's important in a second. So the next thing I want to do is the last thing I'm going to do here for this demo, because this is just a one-on-one, is we're going to apply a monitor. So good, I'm just one eye in the question panel. Adnan H, you are correct. There is no stickiness turned on, because again, I just wanted to show the load balancing. I wanted to demonstrate that. We can turn stickiness on in a second. I want to go to monitors. I want to create a in-depth health check, right? So I want to send a GET request. I want to look for that word master class in the response. So I go to HTTP ECV monitor, which is here, and I'm clicking on this once to use it as a template. I could edit this if I wanted to, but I don't edit the defaults. So just click Add, and I will take all of the settings and use that as a default custom. All right, and I'm going to look. It's going to send a GET request, and I'm going to look for master class in the response. All right, I click Create, and that's that. And now I'm going to apply that monitor to the service group. Right, so I just go to edit the service group, and we go to monitors, and I add the monitor. I cannot, because I created a service group, it was the fastest way for me to create load balancing 3 backend servers. They all have the same IP address. I have to have the same monitor bound to the whole service group. That's the whole point. I treat the whole group of servers as one. I bind this, and now we see partial up, right? What's going on here, right? So I think we know the reason why things aren't working is because Mr. Blue server doesn't have the whole string master class. It's master minus class, right? So if I come along here, we can see that we don't see the blue, and in fact we only see the green. And this is an interesting one that actually had me when I came across this scenario. I think it was 2008. I spent quite a long time troubleshooting it. The reason for this is that this page is comprised of 2 components, the image and the HTML page. And what's happening is the image is coming from one server, the HTML page comes from the other one, right? So that's why it's easier to demonstrate this using 3. Anyhow, we can actually, if you want to pop into developer tools, look at the network, request this again, and if you look at the headers, here we go. We can see the response headers. This is coming from this server here. It says X powered by ASP.NET Red server. And if you look at the image, that actually also says that it's from the red, which is interesting. I have to take a look and make sure that we're not getting cached responses. The real evidence, though, will be visible here. And this is why I always set up in the GUI. That's my personal preference, and troubleshoot in the CLI. It's that service group. And we can see what's going on in here. All right. So we see the requests that have been sent, the current request rate for those. I can see which server is the first to respond. Now I need to by sending multiple requests like that, just hit shift refresh several times, and we come back in here, and I can see that the top one is not getting anything. All right, it's all mainly being covered by the bottom 2 because the first one is listed as down. Okay, the request per second, you see the state is down and so on. You may want to say, why is this down? So let's say you see one of the servers is down. How do you know what's going on? I simply just do show service group. If this was a service, I would type show service. And I can see here failed. And the reason why, it gives it to me in English, failure, pattern not found in response. Et voila, I know exactly why this has failed. Right, so that's the main thing people would say when a server is down. Why is it down? NetScaler will tell you why. Even if you're not load balancing the traffic, you can create a service on NetScaler to actually do the health check, and it'll tell you, and it'll throw a syslog or SNMP trap when that goes down. Right, so you don't even have to be load balancing to do health checks. You don't have to be passing production traffic to do health checks. It can be the doctor of your DMZ. Anyway, I digress. Let's go in here, and I'm going to edit this page quickly, which I happen to have open. Take out that offending minus sign, save it, and it takes a few seconds, and that will come back up. Once the monitor fails, it checks it every 5 seconds by default, and then once it goes down, it will actually check it every 30 seconds, and we can see it's now up. All right, so it is back up again, and we are back up and running. Those are all configurable parameters, by the way. Now, so that's kind of that's load balancing. That's the sort of stuff I wanted to show you. What I want to look at now is something for the experts. All right, so something for the experts, and that is the ability, and that's why I'm just leaving it on round robin at the moment, to ask NetScaler what the next request is going to be. So where is it going to land? Right? What is the decision? What decision is it going to make? I drop into the shell and type NSAPI manager. This is like the reg edit of NetScaler, so you have to be careful with this. You should really only, I would copy and paste. If this was a production NetScaler, I'd be copy and pasting into it, because it's, as I said, it is really for the experts, for those who, not for the faint-hearted, those who are confident off the keyboard, typo-free. I think that was the name of my vServer. I'm going to double check that because I don't want to make any mistakes. RGB minus vServer. So I'm going to run this command against this vServer, and I'm going to send, just in case there was an FQDN or some host, virtual hosting involved. There isn't, so it doesn't really matter what I put in here. And I want to display the decision that's going to be made. Right, now I do have a typo in there. No. Okay, and this looks good. Equals minus T. It's LB decision. And there we see it selected one of the servers. I run it again, and we can see it's now 62, 64, 63, 62, 64, 63. So it's actually telling me which one it's going to actually choose. Now, by doing this, it actually consumes the request. So if it's supposed to go to 64, I've just used up that particular slot. So if I was to hit that now with a browser, I would not land on the server 64. So it can be handy. We can also configure this for GSLB, and that's where it gets interesting. We can pass in an IP address used for proximity-based load balancing to see where we would be sent in a GSLB scenario under proximity-based load balancing. So that's where this comes from. Just lets you know that there's a lot of configuration, there's a lot of flexibility, granularity in the things you can do with NetScaler. We make it very, very easy. We have a lovely GUI. As you can see, a few clicks and I can set up load balancing, but we also have the sophistication to go in and see what's happening at a very minute level. All right, so I think that's about all I have, unless there's any questions.
Oh my God, are there questions?
There are several here. If there's anything that we want to
specifically
call out.
There was one I wanted to ask actually, Ronan. I've lost it now. It was about using. Here you go. It was from Jerry S. And when using SSL, can NetScaler route traffic using host headers?
It's a really good question, and it's one of those. It's almost like a loaded question, Jerry. So the answer, if I had to give an answer in one word, I would say yes. If I had more words, I would say yes, but you have to use server name indication headers, right? That's if I want to do something specific. If I'm doing, that's if I want to have one single IP address, and if I want to have one single IP, I want to have multiple certificates, I have to use server name indication, because you cannot get at the host name until you decrypt it. To decrypt it, you have to choose a certificate. And so you don't know which certificate to choose, so you can decrypt it to actually look at it. So once you choose the wrong one and you send that, and there's there's going to be an error. However, server name indication SNI certs do include the host outside of the encrypted payload. But there are some limitations with regard to the browsers that support it. I think it's more or less covered now in today's modern browser landscape.
Yes, good answer. And it went on. You almost practically described the rest of his question about multiple sites, one IP address, and lots of certificates. Okay, Ronan, look, given the time, I'm going to ask you to go and take a look at the question. I know that Steve and Mike and Josh have been busy bashing
They haven't
questions.
anything to do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one that's calling you out from James H. About the monitors that you're making, you're choosing there, so perhaps you can respond to that. So with that, I'll say thank you very much, and we'll move across to Mudit. Mudit, I'm sorry, it's very late with you, I know. Are you there?
Yes, Jason.
Oh, for a second I thought you'd gone to bed. So Mudit, what is it? It's now 11:30, midnight with you? Midnight.
No, it's 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so let's give you the incentive to tell the story quickly so that you can go and enjoy the rest, or get some sleep, shall we say. But thanks a lot for holding on. And we've just made you presenter, and you're going to tell us a little about CloudBridge 7.4. And I'm just wondering, I've lost your presenting on one of my...
Can you see my screen?
On one of my monitors I can, but not on... And on two of them I can, but on one I cannot. So I don't know why that is. Okay, I guess there you go. I can see your screen. Please take it away.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Hello, everyone. This is Mudit. I'm product manager for CloudBridge product line. So as Jason pointed out, my intent today is to give you a brief overview of the upcoming release. It's labeled 7.4. There are going to be a lot of exciting features in it. Also, at the end of this presentation, we want to throw open an opportunity for you to sign up for beta. So jumping right in, let's look at the key themes and highlights of this release. We are planning to bring expanded visibility, which means we are expanding Hdx Insight more in depth, and we are also adding another panel called WAN Insight, which will give you application visibility beyond just SDX. We are spanning whole set of applications which get used in enterprises today. Second theme is programmability, where we introduce a completely new lightweight and swift API, which truly addresses the use cases of scripting and automation in today's world of DevOps. And a third theme is simplification, where we introduce a set of cool enhancements and graphic user interface so that configuring CloudBridge will be a matter of minutes rather than hours now. And the fourth one is integration with Citrix Insight services, which will help you in getting better diagnostics, faster turnaround times, and you can also self-service yourself. So let's get started with multi-hop Hdx Insight. As you know, CloudBridge provides very deep visibility into XenApp and Zen desktop traffic with Hdx Insight. This is something which we released last year, and it has been very popular feature since. We are trying to build on top of that. So whenever there is an issue or a complaint about slowness or poor experience from a XenApp or Zen desktop user residing in the branch, the first discard is what is causing the slowness. Is it the application? Is it the network? Or is it the XenApp or Zen desktop servers themselves? And that sort of got resolved once we released Hdx Insight Center with CloudBridge. And as you'll notice here, So far, only the data center side CloudBridge fed Appflow records into Hdx Insight Center, but now for multi-hop Insight, we are feeding Appflow records from both data center side as well as branch side. So feeding records from multiple probes in the network means you can get finer granular information. So you can get network stats on every hop of the network. First hop is something between client and the CloudBridge. Second hop is the WAN itself, which is between the two CloudBridge appliances. And third hop is the data center side LAN. Now, to configure this multi-hop Hdx Insight, you have to make sure you enable the right set of Appflow templates on each of these appliances. So this will be provided in the documentation. Also, we have mentioned it here on the slide. Please make sure you enable the right set of Appflow templates. Moving forward, WAN Insight is something which will help us expand visibility beyond Hdx and cover a host of other applications that are typically used in enterprises. We have a list of 200 plus predefined applications within CloudBridge itself, and you can add your own custom application classifiers which can be viewed in WAN Insight. Also, the second theme of WAN Insight is very specific stats related to WAN usage, compression ratio, retransmit timeouts, and things like that. And the third and very important aspect which WAN Insight brings to you is reporting at a branch level. Now you can aggregate specific network and application stats at a branch level, and you can figure out if the issue exists only for a particular client, or the whole branch in which that client is residing in is suffering from that issue, and accordingly adjust your plan of action on how to fix that issue. Okay. Moving forward, the second big theme for this release is programmability, and to address this, we are releasing a completely new set of RESTful APIs. These are going to be very simple, human readable, lightweight, and fast APIs. And what you can do here is, once you start working with the RESTful APIs, first thing to do really is to learn how to use them, and you can do that by browser-based access. And once you have figured out the right set of APIs, you can push out commands as a batch for a set of CloudBridge appliances. So there is a growing trend within network admins to move towards a DevOps paradigm, or even doing network virtualization, where they want to configure a set of network real estate and orchestrate them from a single dashboard. And programmable API is what lets them do that. And besides specific customers who have very large deployments and want to manage their networking real estate, this is also the right API to be used by service providers. We have a lot of service providers who are Citrix customers, and they use CloudBridge as part of their solutions. For them, it's a huge challenge to manage different flavors of CloudBridge configuration in specific customer scenarios. And RESTful API is something which can help them do that in a very efficient and a meaningful way. Moving forward, there is the third theme, which is more of a bunch of enhancements rather than one single enhancement. But what it really helps you do is it gives you a very neat graphical user interface and a very systematic way of configuring things. For example, when you're doing bring up, you can do the quick installation, the first set of installation from a single screen, and you don't have to go anywhere for this. And once that's done, the appliance is up and running, and then you can move on to the advanced settings. Second example which I've picked up here is for configuring networking parameters, and this is something which you do for some of the advanced deployment modes. We have picked up the configuration steps and made them as simple as possible by either eliminating some of the sub steps or streamlining them in a wizard-like workflow. So basically, some of the advanced deployments like WCCP clustering, HA, PPR are going to be as simple, if not simpler, as configuring appliance in inline deployment. Similarly, the configuration for fine-tuning WAN optimization parameters has also been streamlined. And the fourth theme here is the packet analyzer. Now, this is something which is really exciting, with very cool tool. You must try it definitely, because this lets you look at the packet traces in real time. And across the board, the graphical user interface is going to have a lot of tooltips and online help so that you don't have to rely on eDocs on the web. The fourth and the last theme for this release is, of course, there are many more other enhancements besides what we are talking about here, but these are the four key themes in this release. And the fourth theme is Call Home. It's really CloudBridge Appliance's way of calling to the base camp every time there is a major error. And then CloudBridge tries to collect all the diagnostic information and relay it to Citrix Insight server so that all the relevant information is collected in a timely way. This helps in two different ways. Once the Hdx support is uploaded on Citrix Insight services, it automatically runs through all the content plugins and diagnostic plugins. And diagnostic plugins is the real value add here, because it bubbles up any commonly occurring issues and also provides some amount of recommendations on how to fix the issue, or if there is a best practices available to avoid the issue that gets bubbled up here. Also, if none of the commonly occurring issues are found in this Hdx support bundle and it requires a further deeper analysis by our Citrix support team, then all you have to do is pick up the phone and call up Citrix support, because they will already have the required information. They already have your bundle with them, so you don't have to do any collection and upload for that. So that makes their life easier because it was collected in a timely manner, and also your life easier because you just have to call over phone and you don't have to transfer anything. So effectively, this allows you to do a better self-service and also reduce the turnaround times for you. So that were the main features. Let's quickly sum up four key things. Visibility, which is multi-hop Hdx Insight, helps you do faster triangulation, more finer triangulation on the network statistics. Also, a very comprehensive application visibility with WAN Insight. Second theme is programmability with RESTful APIs. This is something which you can use for scripting and batch processing, bulk processing, and manage very large deployments sitting from a automation framework. This RESTful APIs also integrate very well with some of the orchestration tools. A third thing is simplification, where we have either reduced the configuration steps or brought about wizard-like workflows. Not to forget the packet analyzers on the appliance, which help you visualize the trace files. And lastly, the call home from Citrix Insight services, which provides better diagnostics, some of the best practices, and recommendations for your configuration. So that's the update about the CloudBridge 7.4 release. Hopefully we have roused enough curiosity and excitement in you. Now, if you want to try your hands on these features, you just have to sign up for beta trial. This is the link for beta trial, and we'll put this in the chat window. Also, we have a blog published for this beta release, and you can go and have a look at it. So that's all
Awesome.
from me.
Thank you, Mudit. I think it's a very exciting release. I mean, we get a lot of customers asking about how they can actually find out more details about what's going on their network, not just in their Citrix environment, but outside of that. And I think that's bringing this to them. So this is great. So whilst we chat for just a moment, let me run this poll question. If you would like to be a beta tester for CloudBridge 7.4, please just click yes in the box that comes up on your screen now, and I'll give this information to Mudit, and he and his team will drop you an email and make sure that you have all of the right bits and pieces to test the code and feedback your responses. Of course, you'll need your own devices or some VPX devices or something like that. So if you want to, click on that. The other interesting thing there, Mudit, for me was the call home. I know that it's off by default to protect users' privacy, but the advantages of it are that, you know, it can kind of preempt issues, can it not?
Right. So thanks for pointing out that one. Definitely, it is disabled by default. So unless a customer wants to expressly enable it, the customer data is completely safe. And even if they do enable it, it's transmitted as a secure way. But as you pointed out, it sort of preempts issues if you are making a major configuration change in your appliance. Then it's best to go and do a preventive maintenance and do a health check with call home. Okay, so you can manually trigger the call home and upload something on the Citrix Insight server for it to tell you if everything is fine.
Okay. Good. I think there's a lot there. I'm gonna let you go, actually, Mudit. I'm gonna say thank you very much for staying up so late with us. Let me close the poll now. And Mike, will you take back the presentation while I thank Mudit one more time for joining us and staying with us so late to give us all this exciting news about CloudBridge 7.4. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
And we're gonna move across now to yes, to Mike's screen, but also to talk to Steve Barnes in sunny Michigan.
Thank you. Beautiful Michigan.
Beautiful, out on the lake. I know it's a great life, huh? Okay, Mr. Midwest, Mr. Calm and Collected.
Yeah, well,
25,000T, awesome.
I'm pretty excited over here to be able to tell you about one of our newest platforms. The MPX 25000T is a series, and there'll be a few different form factors coming along the way. But on the next slide, we'll see some of the key details. This platform is set up at the ultra high end, still just a mere 2 rack units high. This platform is able to push 160 gig at layer 7 through. So looking at this platform, a main contrast is around the SSL performance, and the positioning for this in the telco and carrier service provider space is more about packet performance and connections, requests per second, than SSL offload. So the first in the 25,000 series comes out in 2 size with PayGrow in between. So you could start out at 100 gig and go up to 160. You could also cluster this thing with up to 32 instances. You'll get well over 3 terabytes in a cluster. So the price performance are very strong on this platform. And on the next slide, we'll get a little more detail. In the next section even, we'll go into that blog that was highlighted on the right of the last slide. Here, looking at the detail, I'd like to draw your eyes towards the bottom 3 from the bottom. It would be the SSL transactions per second with 2K certs. So 1.4 thousand, certainly that's a lower number than what we would expect of the 2200 series or even the 24s. That's the focus of this platform. So we've got very, very high layer 4 through 7 throughput, up over 100 gig, and 160 requests per second are measured there as well. And you can see TCP connections per second, some other good numbers. DNS is mentioned as well. And on the last slide for this update, talking about the 25,000 series, it is the first 160 gig ADC with the best layer 7 price performance. It does pay grow between 100 gig and 160. It does cluster for your tri-scale action, and definitely for a 2 rack unit tall ADC, smallest footprint, highest performance, giving you the services that you're known for. The web app firewall was another metric on the slide before that shows what kind of throughput's going on there. So if you really needed a large, high throughput capacity platform, this would be for you. The basic and advanced traffic, I always like to point to Ronan's excellent explanation of binding and using policy to identify just the traffic needing those advanced protections. But still, on the 160T, we're doing 16 gig of basic or 2.7 advanced. So with your firewall sizing, you'll see all the strength and processing in this platform. So that's really all I had, Jason. Thank you.
I think it's awesome. I'm excited about it. And yes, we're aiming this at the carriers who are telling us that we don't really need so much SSL. We just need the grunt. But we don't want to have this big old chassis. We just want to be able to build it as we go. And so that's what this is designed for. But experience tells me, Steve, that what we build for one type of environment soon catches on in the enterprise as well. I know we bought some huge boxes from some of our web customers, and now they're in demand in started out in the financial sector, but in other sectors of the enterprise as well. So I say to people who look at this and say, that's not for me, you never know what the future will bring.
Absolutely, I agree. And it really broadens the portfolio. It's the same NetScaler running on a different platform. So you can go between VPX, SDX, MPX, and this is our ultra high end where less SSL is needed. It's pretty cool what Marissa's been able to do with the platforms.
Totally agree with you. Steve, thanks a lot for the update on that, and I'll let you get back to your questions, the question meister. Thank you very much. So we're into the news section, the final straight, and I think Josh has been having a little look at what's going on, and he's got some updates for us on the blogs, right?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Jason. So the first blog that we come to here is the cloud scale economics for mobile operators. This is exactly what Steve was just mentioning. It's accessible online. It's out there. It goes through the architecture and such of the NetScaler 25,000 series. So without repeating what Steve had just said, it's certainly there, available. Certainly go and have a look for additional details regarding that. Next slide. The next slide, an interesting one. So currently going on right now is the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, where Citrix is representing and is also joined by Cisco and Intel to demonstrate essentially dynamic service chaining. Considering the massive push for SDN and NFV out in the world today, some great information is going to be released, because when we jump into the world of SDN, automation, all of the service chaining, it really can't happen without, the next generation or very robust ADC, and that's where Citrix NetScaler plays a part. So certainly some good stuff going on there at the Mobile World Congress. Next slide, please. Next slide is a pop quiz for networking. So our e-learning courses recently had one, I believe, for the virtualization. This is the second quiz that's been released, and this is focusing specifically on networking and NetScaler in general. It's about a 10-question quiz The benefit of investing the time in taking the quiz is that you could win a free e-learning course, and any and all participants will receive 15% off future e-learning courses. So, within this blog, it'll direct you to gain access on, how to take the quiz, how to get involved. Certainly a great asset there. Next slide, please. So this is a great technical article, essentially how to prevent a DOS via user lockouts at the NetScaler gateway. It goes through some of the common challenges, I suppose, with customization, specifically on the NetScaler gateway, and really goes through some best practices, step-by-step. Specific examples, I believe, are on two-factor authentication with Radius and LDAP. I know we saw a couple questions involving that on today's masterclass, so certainly check out this blog. It's got some great technical information and some alternative ways of managing your NetScaler gateway by ways of authentication. Next slide, please. So Synergy 2015, it's coming up very soon in May, actually. This is a great article which basically gets your foot in the door. It previews and lists a lot of the labs and the sessions that are available and that will be happening in Synergy in Orlando this coming May. So great introductory article to to start to understand what's available at Synergy 2015. Next slide, please. So no private key, no problem. How to decrypt SSL traffic with session keys. Another great technical-based article. What it essentially does is it goes through and talks about some of the general challenges or efforts when tracing or troubleshooting or trying to view that encrypted data. It calls out tools such as Wireshark. If you're familiar, of course, with NetScaler, you're familiar with Wireshark. And again, the effort to go involved to decrypt those keys and how to get your hands on that important data in a timely manner. This specific article is going through and describing how to do it with session keys. So an interesting take, another approach to digesting to making that data visible. Certainly worth a check out if it is of interest. And next slide, please. So automate your app firewall signature updates. Within Citrix NetScaler, the web application app firewall, it has the ability to connect to a online source and download and update, more importantly, certain signatures to make sure that you're protecting your applications in the most update manner as possible. This article is actually from one of our field consultants who is on the front lines. It offers a script to actually go ahead on a different machine, download those signatures, and then set it up in a way the NetScaler can digest those on your maintenance schedule, on your time, and of course, allowing that extra layer of security, if you will, or either organization to be able to collect those signatures and then, of course, upload those or input them into the NetScaler again on your schedule. So some great information there, and of course, coming from the front lines, it's certainly used in a lot of different situations. Next slide, please. So preserve all the important client IP throughout the process. So this specific article from one of our product managers on the NetScaler team, NetScaler policies, simplified client IP assertion on the back end. So what this is a complementary article to a blog that was released in 2012. We see a lot and hear a lot about specific use cases being able to preserve the client IP. Not only to insert the original client IP, but to preserve it through the stream. It's a very common use case, and what this article does is walk you through some actual examples of rewrite actions for you to be able to accomplish this. Again, it is a highly demanded, highly requested use case that we hear from the field. So certainly check that out. Some very valuable information there. Next slide, please. So CloudBridge 7.4, this is the blog that Mudit was referencing during his presentation. It's all about the beta program. what's involved, features, etc. Of course, this blog will get you into that beta program and has all the necessary information as well. Next slide, please. So this article here, the Citrix specialists stand out from the generalist crowd. Back in Citrix Summit in Las Vegas in January, what Citrix released is the specialist program for solution advisors. So this is targeted towards the channel, the partner community. However, tremendous information in here regarding the value of this new program. Not only the value that it brings, but also benefits and how to build your strengths to get the most out of the product, the overall vision. All of those things are incorporated within this in this article, and the goal at the end is for you to be able to really leverage your specializations to advance as an overall Citrix solution advisor. Next slide, please. So the CloudBridge VPX now comes in more flavors. This article is specifically around the virtual appliance for CloudBridge, the different versions, and of course it is announcing a brand new version of the VPX, and it will have its own set of features and whatnot. So it's essentially a preview article on these new virtual appliances and kind of the direction it's going, specifically regarding feature sets. And next article, please. So Cisco and Citrix marching together forward. What this is an informational blog, essentially on the Cisco and Citrix relationships, how both parties fit together in multi-tenant environments. What it has is it has an intro, but then it links to some really great videos of real-life use case stories from service providers and how they leverage the two technologies together, for successful outcomes. So extremely interesting, compelling information, and what I really like about it is it's coming from the mouths of people that have implemented it, real life stories. So it's certainly impactful there. And I do believe that concludes the blog section, so I'll pass it back over to you, Jason.
Thank you, Josh. Some great stuff there, and so much going on. Yes, we're working very tightly with Cisco. I would like to say to everyone on this call, if someone on this call does not win the prize for the pop quiz, then we're doing something wrong. So I'd love to see everybody click on that by March the 8th and go and take that quiz and win the prize. Win one for the NetScaler Masterclass. We'd love to see that. Okay. Thanks very much. So what is on there? There are a lot of things going on. The first one here, I know we've got some people from the UK. The UK user group, the Citrix UK user group, 2nd of April, a meeting up in Newcastle upon Tyne. It's lovely, sunny Newcastle, and you can. They're asking now for the sessions that you'd like to see. So if you've got some idea, if you're in the UK and you'd like to go to this, drop Andrew Wood a note and let him know. And they're calling out and they want to see you there to come and talk to them or share your experience, good or bad or indifferent, with Citrix, and let us know what you want to see next. Okay, so it's like a masterclass live. You can really open it up and share, learn from experts, and also provide your own feedback. Similarly, and I know this one's a bit of a tight thing, it's tomorrow. So there is a new user group in Poland, and they're having their first meeting, funnily enough, at the Cisco headquarters down in Krakow. So if you can fly there, it's a beautiful city, well worth going to see, and you can actually learn some new Citrix stuff too. So go along, great partners involved in that. So we've got our own masterclasses coming up. The desktop boys, Lee and Patrick, they're running their masterclass 18th and 19th of March. They do them on consecutive days, and they're going to talk about deploying Link using XenApp and XenDesktop, which should be good fun. But also, you may have seen recently that we've signed up this pact with Google to look at using or developing the Zen app and Zen desktop environments for Chromebooks, the sort of the next generation thin client. So that could be very interesting. I don't know if they've got any Chromebooks to give away, but they do have a guest speaker from Google, and Lee's pretty good at getting guest speakers to bring in freebies. So might be worth going along and having a listen to that. We also have our mobility masterclass, and they are really cool. I mean, there's not a lot of hair on if you if you look at those guys and on the previous guys. The NetScaler masterclass has got all the hair, it seems. But these guys are going to be talking about Zen Mobile 10 on the 11th of March. They do what we do, and they will have 2 on the same day, so they do the repeat rather than on consecutive days. They're going to talk about installing and configuring Zen Mobile 10 and the different hardware architecture, so getting it up with enrolled devices and up and running. So that could be quite a good one. If you're into, I think it was Scott S. had all manner of Zen Mobile and NetScaler questions. Might be a good one to go to, Scott, if you can. I'll single you out and I will find you and send you the link, because it could be an interesting thing for you to go and listen to. And you'll be talking to Chris and Walter there, and they're very entertaining, very dry sense of humor, so that should be fun. So that brings us to near the end. So we're just looking at next month, and we're going to be talking about high availability, what it means, how you achieve it on NetScaler. It's pretty simple, but there are some underlying bits and pieces that you probably want to understand. So if something goes wrong, you need to troubleshoot it. We'll be talking about it next month. And then we're going to take it to content switching. So one of the great things that makes NetScaler so much greater than all its competitors is our ability to write really good code and not rely on ASICs to give us performance. And that's why all of our numbers have always been layer 7 performance, not layer 4 and layer 7, and there's a difference. We can do this on generic hardware. So it means that as Intel continue to roll the boundaries of performance forward, we can benefit very, very quickly. What it also means is that we're pretty damn good at content switching. We've taken the time to focus in on how we can do stuff at the content layer, at the layer 7 and above, layer 7 layer, and really do our server load balancing, or our traffic direction at least, with much more intelligence. And Josh hinted at it in terms of new functionality. There'll be some new functionality coming to your WAN very soon. And if you want to learn more about it, this will be the scoop. This will be the first time you can learn about it. Come along April 1st and listen to what we've got to say and see how you can save your company or you a lot of money on your wide area network costs. So there'll be 2 sessions next month, as always. First Wednesday happens to be April 1st. So 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. we flash the QR codes up if you want to zap that and register now. If not, you will get this deck in the next couple of days, and you will get a link to the recording, which we'll be posting on Citrix TV. So that pretty much brings us to the end. So it just remains for me to say, Mudit, thank you so much for staying up so late. Steve, great work with the questions. I don't know, you've got some magic fingers typing so quickly, I couldn't even get a word in. Ronan, great presentation, as was yours, Mike. Josh, thanks for looking into the blogs and giving summaries on those. I've been Jason Poole. We've had a great time, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Keep the emails coming in and let us know what else you'd like to see. I know that, is it Gal C would like to see something on global server load balancing. We'll look into doing that fairly soon, Gal. But I've been Jason Poole, as I say. It's been NetScaler Masterclass from March 2015. We'll see you next month. Thanks a lot.